year 2022, we are still watching Joe Flacco play football, and somehow Lamar Jackson still hasn't gotten his contract extension. But in case you're in the camp that Lamar Jackson somehow doesn't deserve all the money in Baltimore after seeing this week 1 performance, I bet you'll change your mind. The Jets offense was as anemic as you'd imagine. However, Joe Flacco did manage to do a world-class job at stat padding, as he finished the game with over 30 completions, 300 yards, and his only touchdown of the game came in garbage time with less than 5 minutes left in the game. As for Lamar Jackson, he went off, finishing the game with 213 passing yards, 3 passing touchdowns, and just 1 interception, which came late in the 4th quarter. But in case you think those 3 passing touchdowns were gimmicky, I hate to break it to you, but Lamar Jackson connected with Rashad Bateman for a 55-yard bomb. They even tossed a no-look touchdown that would make Patrick Mahomes look good. Unlike basically every Lamar Jackson game ever, Lamar was held to just 17 yards rushing on 6 attempts, meaning that despite Lamar not being able to showcase his trademark scrambling ability, his arm was still more than enough to win the game for Baltimore. As for the Jets, Michael Carter seems like a bell cow running back, so if you're in the need of a flex or starting running back next week in fantasy, Michael Carter is rostered in 77% of all leagues on ESPN, so go ahead and see if you can steal him, because the Ravens would win this game 24-9. Going into the new NFL season, there's a lot of uncertainty surrounding the Patriots offense, not because of Bill Belichick, of course, but because former Lions head coach and career defensive coordinator Matt Patricia would be calling the offensive plays for some reason. Well, considering the fact that the Patriots just gave up 7 points in 4 quarters, and the fact that the Patriots had less than 80 rushing yards as a team with just 3.5 yards per carry, it's pretty safe to say that Matt Patricia has some work to do this week. Mac Jones, on the other hand, performed pretty well for a quarterback with an inept offensive coordinator. Sure, he had a bad interception on the first drive, but all things considered, the second-year QB completed 70% of his passes, had just over 200 yards, and even managed to find the end zone, connecting with receiver/running back hybrid Ty Montgomery for the 6-yard touchdown. But as for Tua, well, considering the fact that the Dolphins averaged less than 3 yards per carry, Tua needed to be on point in order to win this ball game. Sorry, Tua doubters, but on point he was. Tua was turnover free, had 270 yards passing, the most he had since week 11 of last year, and even managed to find Tyreek Hill 4 times for 98 yards receiving. The biggest highlight of the day was when Tua was able to find Jalen Waddle on 4th down right before the end of the first half for a near 50-yard touchdown. All in all, the Miami Dolphins dominated this contest after they were up by multiple scores. As for the Patriots, Matt Patricia isn't the only loser. Devonte Parker fantasy owners also took a hit, as the new perceived stud wide receiver garnered just 2 targets the whole game. Dolphins win 20-7. Going into week 1, Trey Lance versus Justin Fields was hyped up to be the next Patrick Mahomes versus Josh Allen type matchup. I mean, after all, when the San Francisco 49ers traded up to the number 3 overall pick in the 2021 NFL draft, at least I thought they were targeting Justin Fields with that pick. So forever, I believe Justin Fields and Trey Lance and Mac Jones are all going to be linked to one another. The jury is still out about whether both of these QBs are their respective franchises' future, but one thing is for sure: if you like offense and points, this was not the game for you. Both QBs didn't complete 50% of their passes. Both QBs had pretty bad interceptions, and after an offseason worth of hype, it appears both Justin Fields and Trey Lance both still need some time to develop. All in all, Lance performed better than Justin Fields, finishing with over 200 total yards, 54 of them being rushing, but it's tough to tell whether that's because he has more skill or simply because his supporting cast were able to make it all the way to the NFC Championship last year with Jimmy Garoppolo as quarterback. There is no doubt in my mind, whenever we're comparing Justin Fields to Trey Lance, we have to take into consideration how Justin Fields has no O-line. Justin Fields does have an average defense that got significantly worse over the offseason, and Justin Fields doesn't really have a well-known wide receiver core outside of Darnell Mooney and, of course, Equanimeous St. Brown, which we'll get to in just a second. Justin Fields finished with less than 150 total yards, had just 8 completions the entire game, but unlike Trey Lance, had 2 passing touchdowns. The truth is, although Justin Fields struggled, his offensive line didn't do him any favors either. Unlike Trey Lance, it's tough to judge Justin Fields' performance since he was running for his life for what felt like half the game. Defensively, Nick Bosa picked up where he left off, recording 2 QB hits, a tackle for a loss, and a sack, but the 49ers' 5th-round rookie Talanoa Hufanga stole the show, recording 11 tackles, 9 being soloed, 2 tackles for a loss, and a pass deflection, and an interception. As for the Bears, Roquan Smith was elite as always. Rookie Dominique Robinson recorded 1.5 sacks, and the most underrated safety in the NFL, Eddie Jackson, snagged the game-winning interception against Trey Lance, a play where he read Lance's eyes the entire way. The Bears won a punt fest 19-10. Houston started off this game against the Indianapolis Colts Colts red hot, going up to a 20-3 lead early on, and even held that lead throughout the third quarter. However, in the fourth quarter, the Indianapolis Colts rallied back to score 17 straight to force overtime. Unfortunately for Matty Ice, truthers, that's where the scoring ended, as both teams would go scoreless in overtime, but not before Rodrigo Blankenship missed the game-winning field goal with 2 minutes left in the game. This time might seem weird now, but it could get even weirder in Week 17 as the Colts look to make the playoffs in a tough AFC South division featuring the Tennessee Titans and Derrick Henry. Although the Colts tied, fantasy owners with Jonathan Taylor and Michael Pittman in their lineups won as the pair both scored touchdowns and put up 161 yards rushing and 121 yards receiving respectively. In case you were one of those people who took rookie running back Damien Pierce with the second or third round pick in your fantasy drafts, I hate to break it to you, but he just doesn't seem like the dominant running back fantasy owners projected him to be. He was beat out by veteran Rex Burkhead in carries, and when Pierce did touch the ball, he averaged just 3 yards per carry. But in case you're searching for a backup tight end or a starting tight end in general, OJ Howard grabbed 2 touchdowns in this matchup and seems to be a red zone favorite of Davis Mills. Howard is on less than 1% of rosters according to ESPN, so consider picking him up because the Colts would tie the Texans in this game 20-20. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the game that we've all been waiting for, the game that has been really hyped up over this entire week, Baker Mayfield and the Carolina Panthers face off against the Cleveland Browns. In a game dubbed the Baker Bowl, does anyone honestly win? Browns backup quarterback Jacoby Brissett had the Panthers right where he wanted them in the third quarter as the Browns led 20-7 thanks to the legs of Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. Not to mention a pretty terrible first half from Baker Mayfield, which included a bad interception, some terrible overthrows, and sacks which easily could have been avoided. But in the second half, we saw the next part of the Baker Mayfield cycle as he led his team to back-to-back touchdowns, including this beautiful 75-yard bomb that was on the money to Robbie Anderson to make the score 23-21. You remember when Robbie Anderson was sad about the idea of Baker Mayfield getting traded to the Carolina Panthers? Well, that seems to be a thing of the past. At that moment, it seemed like the Panthers were revitalized and their offense was clicking on all cylinders as they took the lead with just 1 minute remaining as they kicked a field goal to make the score 23-24. However, Jacoby Brissett proved why he's one of the best backups in the NFL as he led the Browns 35 yards in just 1 minute to set up the game-winning 58-yard field goal, which propelled the Browns to victory. Honestly, Baker seemed terrible in the first half, but in the second half, he looked like the #1 overall pick he was drafted to be. It's too early to tell which Baker Carolina has this season, so give it a few more games. Bear in mind, Baker was just traded for 2 months ago, so how much time has he reasonably had to prepare for this game? But if Cleveland can keep this offensive momentum going, they should be ready to go on a playoff push when Deshaun Watson returns. Ironically, rather than DJ Moore leading the Panthers, Robbie Anderson, who was highly critical of Baker Mayfield, led the team in receiving and even was on the receiving end of Baker's 75-yard touchdown. Sorry, DJ Moore fantasy owners. Looks like you grabbed the wrong receiver. Browns win 26-24. It seems like the theme of this week is former players that played with one another or head coach that played with former quarterback are facing off with one another. And in this particular game, when the Jacksonville Jaguars face off against the Washington Commies, we see Carson Wentz facing off against his former head coach, Doug Peterson. Carson Wentz threw 4 touchdowns for the first time since 2017. And up until the final drive of the game, Trevor Lawrence finally looked like the real deal. Washington would take a 14-3 lead into halftime after Wentz would find Curtis Samuel and rookie Jahan Dotson in the end zone. And after a missed field goal by the Jacksonville Jaguars, the only points they could muster came on their first drive of the game. In the second half, Carson Wentz thought he played for the Colts still as he tossed back-to-back interceptions, helping the Jacksonville Jaguars score 19 straight points to make the score 22-14. Bear in mind that the last game Carson Wentz played was against the Jacksonville Jaguars, and it was a play-in game with the Indianapolis Colts. So without a doubt, this is a revenge game for Carson Wentz. And in the fourth quarter, Wentz snapped into it and tossed 2 more touchdowns, both of them being bombs, to help the Commanders take back the lead 22-28. However, it didn't matter because the way this game played out, this scenario was perfect for Trevor Lawrence to go down the field and lead his team to the first win of the season. But unfortunately, that all came crashing down as Trevor Lawrence chucked up a prayer which not only would be intercepted, but would end the game as the Jaguars fell just short of the win. But what about Christian Kirk? You might remember that Christian Kirk was the man that was paid the bag to come to Jacksonville and be the #1 wide receiver. I mean, this man absolutely obliterated the wide receiver market. He's the reason why Devonte Adams got paid a huge contract to go to the Raiders, and Tyreek Hill left the Kansas City Chiefs altogether. So how did he do? In week 1, he earned every single penny as he was undeniably Trevor Lawrence's favorite target, and he even racked 117 yards receiving. In the backfield, James Robinson earned nearly double the carries Travis Travis Etienne got, meaning if you picked Etienne to be your starting running back in fantasy football, you might want to start looking into other options. If you are a fantasy owner, follow me on Twitter, we'll mourn together. He was my third pick this year. As for Washington's backfield, Antonio Gibson not only led his team in rushing yards, but was also his team's leading receiver as well. If you thought last season was a breakout year for AG, just get ready for this season. The Commies win this one 28-22. Philadelphia Eagles and the Detroit Lions was arguably the most exciting matchup of the day. I know, no one could have predicted this. Going into the fourth quarter, this game was all but over as the Philadelphia Eagles led 38-21, but the Detroit Lions ended up putting up 14 points on the board in the fourth quarter, making you wonder if Matthew Stafford was still in town to put up those numbers. However, Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni made sure that the Lions couldn't steal this game, as on the final drive, the Philadelphia Eagles would kill not one, not two, not even 3 minutes, but nearly 4 minutes of game clock in order to win the ball game. Massive part of the win for Philly was AJ Brown, who finished with 155 yards and debuted an insane connection with QB Jalen Hurts. Hurts' passing numbers might not blow you away, as he completed just 56% of his passes for 243 yards and out of 63.5 QBR, but on the ground, things were way different. Miles Sanders had 13 carries for nearly 100 yards and a score, but as for Jalen Hurts, he averaged over 5 yards per carry, finishing the game with 90 yards on the ground and converted countless third downs with his legs to win the game. On the other side of the field, Jared Goff played decent, tossing 2 touchdowns, but also had a pretty bad interception, which resulted in a pick 6 for Philadelphia. DJ Chark and Amon-Ra St. Brown found the end zone today for Detroit, but DeAndre Swift stole the show with 175 yards from scrimmage and also found the end zone. If Detroit's offense can play this well in the first 3 quarters of the game as well, there is no reason that Dan Campbell can't finish the season with a decent record. Eagles win a close one, 38-35. Man, this game was absolute insanity. In the debut for Money Mitch Trubisky, the Pittsburgh Steelers came out and made one hell of a statement. On the Bengals' first drive of the game, Joe Burrow would be intercepted. Get used to hearing this. Minkah Fitzpatrick would take the interception all the way back to the house to give the Steelers a 7-0 lead. A few drives later, and the Bengals would put up a field goal, but on the next possession, Joe Burrow would be hit as he threw yet another interception, the second of the first quarter. Flash forward to the start of the second quarter, Pittsburgh leads 10-3. Joe Burrow drops back, throws, and right into the hands of TJ Watt, who grabs the ball at the line of scrimmage for Joe Burrow's third interception of the game. The Steelers would go ahead and convert the turnover into 7, and by halftime, the Bengals trailed 17-6. However, the third quarter was all Cincinnati as their defense forced 2 punts, and Joe Burrow appeared to finally get into rhythm as he tossed the first touchdown of the season to Tyler Boyd. But Joe Burrow still couldn't shake the interception bug, as on the first drive of the fourth quarter, Joe Burrow fired over the middle, and for the fourth time of the game, Joe Burrow was intercepted. However, thank the Cincinnati Bengals defense, because the rest of the half, Pittsburgh couldn't move the ball whatsoever, and Joe Burrow was able to lead the Bengals into the end zone once again to tie the game 20-20. In overtime, the game was all but over as the Steelers punted and the Bengals managed to move the ball into field goal range. An easy 30-yard kick was all it took for Evan McPherson and the Bengals to walk away with the win in week 1. But the snap was high, the hold was bad, making the Laces face the kicker, and the kick was wide left. The Steelers would now have a chance to win the ball game, and driving the ball to the 37-yard line, Chris Boswell would miss the kick. That's right, back-to-back missed field goals for both teams. The Bengals would get the ball back one more time, but after a fumble from Joe Burrow on third down, the Bengals were forced to punt. Mitch Trubisky, for the third time, drove his team into field goal range, and this time Chris Boswell did not miss as he won the game 23-20 in favor of the Steelers. The Steelers might have won, but in this game, TJ Watt supposedly tore his pec, which if that's true, this would make this win a loss for the Steelers. The Atlanta Falcons versus the New Orleans Saints. There was a lot of drama in this game, and the Falcons would start out the game with a 24-10 lead over the division rival New Orleans Saints with just 12 minutes left in regulation. Up to this point, the Saints' drives all ended in either punts, a fumble, or if they were lucky, they'd kick a field goal or steal a touchdown. But in the fourth quarter, Jameis Winston was hungry for a W because he led the New Orleans Saints 75 yards in 4 plays, capping it off with a touchdown pass to Michael Thomas. The Saints would then convert the 2-point conversion, and after a Falcons punt, New Orleans finally had a chance to make the ball game a 1-possession game. Famous Jameis Winston was up for the job though, as he led the New Orleans Saints nearly 90 yards and capped off the drive, finding Michael Thomas for a second time in the end zone. However, after a failed 2-point conversion, the Saints needed just one more chance to complete the comeback. In traditional Atlanta Atlanta Falcons form, Atlanta would punt after a failed drive. Marcus Mariota would continue his remarkable game by leading Atlanta all the way to midfield, where they had the chance to win the game with a 60-plus yard field goal from Younghoe Koo, which would get blocked, which would result in a New Orleans victory. But more importantly, we found out that Marcus Mariota is a solid QB with no plan whatsoever on losing the starting job. And oh yeah, Cordero Patterson is still as unstoppable as ever. The New York Giants versus the Tennessee Titans saw the reemergence of one of football's most electric running backs in Saquon Barkley. The first half of this game was all Tennessee. On their first drive, Ryan Tannehill found Dontrell Hilliard in the end zone to go out to a 7-0 lead. The Giants offense was quiet the entire first half, and on the one drive they looked like they finally could end their offensive drought. Daniel Jones did something every Giants fan is far too accustomed to. He fumbled. The Titans managed to put up a pair of field goals, and by halftime the Giants found themselves down 13-0. However, in the second half, Saquon Barkley finally arrived. He broke off nearly a 70-yard run and capped it off with a rushing touchdown. The Giants would go for two and fail, but on the next drive, another 70-yard bomb, but this time it wasn't off of the legs of Saquon Barkley. It was off the arm of Daniel Jones, who connected with Sterling Shepard for a 65-yard touchdown, and suddenly the score was just 13-13. The Titans would respond with yet another Ryan Tannehill to Hilliard touchdown pass, taking the lead back 20-13. With a chance to win the ball game, Daniel Jones would drive his team down the field, enter the red zone, target rich homie Saquon in the back of the end zone, and it was intercepted. But when you think Danny Dimes has flipped a page, he throws out the entire book. With a chance to finally put the game away, Tennessee would punt after just 5 plays, and with a do-over, Daniel Jones gets the job done with a touchdown pass to Chris Myarick. And New York would even convert the 2-point conversion. After a missed 47-yard field goal by Tennessee, the Giants would hold on to win 21-20, but not without the help of Saquon Barkley, who went off for 195 yards from scrimmage and a touchdown. Yet another rivalry game that features the Green Bay Packers and the Minnesota Vikings. You saw the Green Bay Packers get dominated in week 1 of the 2021 NFL season. Would they start this season out the same way? Let's find out. On the first drive of the game, Kirk Cousins would find Justin Jefferson for 21 yards, and Jefferson would go on to cap off the drive with a 4-yard touchdown reception. On the Packers' first play, Christian Watson would burn Patrick Peterson deep for a 75-yard drop. Yes, this was a huge issue for the Green Bay Packers over the offseason, and we even have an interview from Aaron Rodgers that would address this incident later on.
There's some of the same guys. That's repeat mistakes are a problem. So we just got to clean those things up a little bit. The young guys, especially young receivers, we got to be way more consistent. A lot of drops, a lot of bad route decisions, run the wrong route. So we gotta get better in that area.
The Packers would be forced to punt after just 5 plays. A Vikings field goal and a few punts later, Justin Jefferson would find the end zone once again, this time on a 31-yard play-action pass from Kirk Cousins. In desperation, Rodgers would chuck up a prayer that can only be described as Favre-like, which promptly landed in the hands of veteran safety Harrison Smith to end the first half. To start the second half, things continue to get worse for Aaron Rodgers and the Packers, as he would be strip sacked, and on the ensuing possession, Minnesota would catch the turnover in for 3 more points. You can thank the Vikings' smothering defensive line, who had 4 sacks in this game, for shutting down the offense and helping force 2 turnovers. However, finally the Packers would respond with a touchdown run by A.J. Dillon. And at this point, all the Vikings had to do was kick 1 more field goal and kill the clock until they won the ball game 23-7. But not before Justin Jefferson caught 9 balls for 184 yards and 2 touchdowns. As for the Packers, their leading wide receiver, who wasn't a running back, was rookie Romeo Doubs, who caught 4 balls for 39 yards. Justin Jefferson train continues on. Opening day and Patrick Mahomes. You couldn't name a better combination. The early season Arizona Cardinals, who typically dominate in the earlier part of the season, versus Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs post the Tyreek Hill trade. How would this go? Well, it would actually go remarkably. To start the game, the Chiefs would ride Clyde Edwards-Helaire all the way to the red zone, where Patrick Mahomes would find Travis Kelce for the inaugural touchdown of the season. The Cardinals would go 3 and out on their first drive, but on cue, the Chiefs drove nearly 90 yards in 7 plays, and Mahomes capped off the drive with a shovel pass to Clyde Edwards-Helaire for the touchdown. The Cardinals finally put up some points of their own on the board with a 2-yard touchdown run by James Conner. But let's be honest, when the Chiefs' offense is in rhythm, meaning Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, and all the weapons surrounding number 15 are on the same page, there is simply no outsourcing the Chiefs in a shootout. Mahomes would go on a flawless drive, tossing yet another touchdown to Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and before halftime they would add 3 more points to to lead the Cardinals 23-7. To start the second half, the Cardinals picked up where they left off, punting after just 5 plays, and so did the Chiefs as they drove 75 yards in 4 plays, including a 35-yard deep ball to Travis Kelce. Jody Fortson finished the drive, hauling in a 1-yard score from Patrick Mahomes for his 4th touchdown pass of the game to make the score 30-7. After another repetitive 3-and-out for the Cardinals, Patrick Mahomes would find Mecole Hardman 2 yards deep in the end zone for his 5th and final touchdown of the game. The Cardinals were able to put up a few touchdowns in garbage time to make the score a little less lopsided, but the Chiefs still made sure to tack on a rushing touchdown to get the 40-piece. The Kansas City Chiefs dominate this contest 44-21, but not before Patrick Mahomes officially starts his MVP campaign, completing nearly 77% of his passes for 360 yards and 5 touchdowns. Turns out he's just fine without Tyreek Hill on the roster. The revamped Las Vegas Raiders versus the souped-up Los Angeles Chargers. Yet another revenge game from a former franchise cornerstone of the Raiders in Khalil Mack returning to Las Vegas. Well, he was technically playing for Oakland at the time, but returning to the Raiders as a member of the Los Angeles Chargers. To start the game, the two teams traded field goals and then punts until the Chargers opened up things by scoring on a play-action touchdown pass to Xander Horvath to make the score 3-10. A few drives later, and how does Derek Carr respond? By throwing a ball over the middle, grabbed by linebacker Drew Tranquill for the interception. Justin Herbert would convert the turnover into 7 in just 2 plays as he connected with DeAndre Carter for the 23-yard touchdown to make the score 17-3 at halftime. This game appeared to be a blowout, but then the Raiders would open up the second half, firing on all cylinders as Derek Carr found Brandon Bolden 18 yards deep for Las Vegas's first touchdown of the game. But Justin Herbert and the Chargers were able to respond with an 18-yard touchdown pass of their own, this time to tight end Gerald Everett. After this, both offenses would go dormant. The Raiders would kick a field goal, but after that, Derek Carr tossed 2 more interceptions, the second of the day into triple coverage, the third being a nice jump on the route by Bryce Callahan. But either way, those are 2 turnovers that if Las Vegas is able to score on rather than commit turnovers, they probably win this football game. After a missed field goal from the Chargers, Las Vegas was finally able to punch the ball in via a 3-yard touchdown pass to Devonte Adams. But as the fourth quarter ended, the Raiders failed a 2-point conversion and Las Vegas would come up just short 19-24. Justin Herbert balled out, tossing 3 touchdowns and nearly 300 yards. What about Devonte Adams? The new Raiders wide receiver caught 10 balls for 141 yards and a touchdown, meaning I don't think a change of scenery will change his production at all. If you're looking for our Sunday Night Football recap, well, we have a separate video for that. Let me know if in future iterations of this series, if you like Monday Night Football and Sunday Night Football included, or if you're cool with it being separate so I could get this content out to you guys sooner. Aside from that, make sure you drop a like for this brand new series. I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.